Hey, everybody. All right, we're back.
Yes.
We had a couple technical difficulties. Facebook didn't want to hear about holiness, but we're going to put it on anyway.
Amen, somebody.
So
all right, I want to thank again our panelists for being here with us. If you didn't miss, hopefully, some people heard Dr. Haywood's last few words. Hopefully it's still on the other live. I don't know, Dr. Marlon, if you want to recap, if you remember. I know we have like a 5-minute intermission. If not, no worries. We were just talking about how mental health is real, and now that is something that we are talking about in the church.
Yeah, I was just talking about how I grew up at New Birth Church of God in Christ, and how a lot of times I remember growing up and hearing about it was either holiness or hell. And with the church, in order to make sure that we are reaching as the world evolves, I'm ahead. Is it okay? As the world evolves, we just kind of have to make sure that we're literally get to a point of, just make sure that we kind of keeping up with what's going on. That it's not just condemning everyone and what they do, but coming from a loving response. So when we get to talking about, as Deacon Devin mentioned, mental health, but then also understanding that is crucial that we have those type of conversations and not just kind of cast it to the side. Long story short.
True.
Well said.
Well said. So in that, you had actually went to one of our other questions where we're going to ask the question, how do you encourage youth or young adults or anyone that have been hurt by the church to stay with God? And I guess I want to direct that question to, we can go to Chanel.
All right. So what I think first needs to be established is that human beings are not God. We are imperfect people. We're going to be hurt. When people steal my parking spot, I get upset. I get upset. But what we have to establish is God is not man. Man will always make mistakes. Man will disappoint you. Man will hurt you intentionally and unintentionally. But what I think the issue is that some of us equate our pastors, our leaders with God. So if they make a mistake, it's like, let me leave the church because this means God is nowhere in this. And that doesn't mean that. It simply means that they are imperfect people, just like we are. When we make mistakes, we go to God, we ask him for forgiveness. But the way I would encourage anyone, youth, old, seasoned, however you want to identify the person, is to get to know God. Because once you fall in love with God, what happens or what comes with people hurting you or disappointing you, it's going to take some time to get through it. Yes, because it's going to hurt. We are people. We do get hurt. Our feelings get hurt. Our emotions get hurt. But when you love God and you know who God is, you know that God won't hurt you. That's what you have to always keep in mind. And we cannot keep equating people to be God. And I'm done.
That's a whole word. We cannot equate people to being God. Brother Tone, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. For me, it was important for me to leave the situation because it was an employment situation more so than a membership situation, but allow the Lord to lead you to some place where you can be healed. If it is a situation where you need to leave. And I think that that's an important aspect of any situation, is that you have to find a way to get healed. You have to find a way to forgive. You have to find a way to release that energy that hurt you. And you can't immediately jump back into serving, immediately jump back into a leadership position, immediately jump back into rehearsal or a meeting or whatever without addressing your brother first. And then, as Chanel said, you got to know the Lord. It's not his will that we be emotionally injured. God has a way of healing your emotions and your spirit and your inner man, where you can continue on in ministry or in life, period.
Yep. Can I jump in on this too? So we talking about being hurt by church. I would say that we also need to do a better job of actually seeking out reconciliation with people, and not just canceling the church or canceling people, but actually doing what Matthew 18 say about going to one another and actually seeking resolve. And I hope that we as church leaders can do a better job of facilitating those conversations and really seeking reconciliation. Whether a person stays a member of a church or not, I think as a body we have to be reconciled to one another, and not just act like, well, forget them or forget this situation, or even act like you're over it when you're really not.
That's good.
That was real good. So with that, I mean, we know some of us experience church hurt, church hurt, however we choose to go about believing that. But some young people experience church hurt, some other young people experience different things. Why do you all feel that millennials are not as visible in our traditional churches? And that is something that we want to kind of touch on. And how do you feel as though we can, it's a two-part question. How do you feel as though we can reach out to them to bring them back in? Dr. Marlon.
How did I feel like he was going to come to me first? You know what? I think we have to get to the place with the church that we become less judgmental and that we accept people as they are. We say that a lot of times, that, come as you are. But the minute that people walk through a church door that doesn't look like what we're used to them looking like, then in the church, I've seen it where people, all eyes are on them and everyone is looking at them, right? I never forget that I went to, just a regular, I'm not saying this was first jurisdiction meeting, but I'm just saying I went to just a jurisdiction meeting in general. Everybody was dressed like, in full suits, had the dresses, down to the ankles. And I remember seeing like this homeless guy kind of like outside. He wanted to come in, but he didn't come because he really felt that he wasn't dressed appropriate enough to come in. And it made me really think at that moment that have we come to a place with church that the people who really need the help and who needs the service don't feel welcome because of the way that we are now presenting ourselves. And I think now when you're talking about millennials and why they are kind of going away from the church, I've also heard because I mentor a lot of young men, and they say, well, you know what? I don't want to be in the church because I've seen people be fake, right? I've seen people say, oh, I'm living for God, I'm saved, sanctified, but then yet in one way on Sunday, but then when it comes to Monday or Tuesday, you're acting another way. And that's what we have to get to a place of being more real and being more open. And the understand is that, we all struggle to live this life, like to be closer to God. And you're not in this alone. And I think a lot of times we make it, somebody said, you preaching, Dr. Marlon. But I think literally, I used to really feel that you had to be perfect to be saved and to really live for God. It was not until I went to college, when I went to NIU, and if I'm going to shut up because I feel like I'm speaking too long, I joined the Northern Black Choir because I did not go to church when I went to college. But every Wednesday we would have practice. That was my church. And I remember seeing guys with tattoos. They had fitted caps on that was turned to the right or turned to the left, but they loved God. They had I saw women who was wearing pants, who was wearing short skirts, and they were speaking in tongues. I mean, they literally was living a life for God, and I was not used to seeing that. So it changed my perception and my thought about that it's all about the way that you dress, as opposed to it's about what's on the inside. And when I saw those people and how they truly lived and how they was treating each other, they treated each other with respect. They treated me with love. Like that to me is what I feel that is missing a lot of times within the church. we plan church, but we not really receiving the church. And that I feel is, and I'm done. Okay.
That's a good. Thank you for your transparency. Absolutely. Like, definitely. Yeah, there's like so much to even unpack just alone in that question. Does anybody else want to?
Oh, sorry.
Back?
Go ahead.
Deacon Devin,
Brother Tony and then Devin. Deacon Devin, I'm sorry.
What I was going to say is
Go ahead, Brother Tony.
one of the elders at my church, the church I grew up in, he said that the church has become more monument than movement. And I think that young adults want to be a part of something that's going somewhere. I think that, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but a lot of times when you take a step back and zoom out on the average traditional church, they're stuck and in ways that don't allow them to function in ways that support the lifestyle, the speed, the energy of a thriving young adult ministry. And either we haven't done a good job of staying connected with that age group. I grew up in a church that it was booming. The young adults and the kids was like, it was crazy. But when everybody grew up and went to college and moved to different cities or was in the same city and had a job and whatever, it was just kind of like, where everybody at? And you got to be able to stay connected and stay moving. And I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
That is something that I think all of us have had to deal with, which is, you touched on it, which is a lot of our friends and family. We grew up in the church with them. We came up with them. Everybody was there. We thought church was cracking, when we were younger. And then we got older and we're like, where all our friends at? But I wonder, or I'm basically asking Pastor Tracy, what solution would you give to those pastors or to those ministers as to how they can get that generation back or get us back into the church? How can we be more relevant, or how can we be more progressive now that we come off attractive to us?
Yeah. So first thing I would say is I feel sorry for Generation Z because right now a lot of the attention is on the millennials. And what I see happening is they're being the forgotten generation in Generation Z. And so I want to include them in this for now. And I would say that it starts with trust. I think we need to develop more trust both ways. And I think when we allow that space for trust, then we allow that space for growth and allow the space for creativity and all that could be. But I think I see most often an absence of trust.
Angelica?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a difficult situation, obviously, with all of us. But I feel like with churches, like we've all been saying, it's about transparency. I was having a conversation with an unbeliever, and she was saying how she went to almost this group that wasn't like, Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was just talking about your life experiences. And they were just in the room all together, just talking about just like, trauma. And she spent thousands of dollars in order for this experience, which is literally just testimony service at church, And that's the thing about it, is that if we were maybe more transparent and honest about our past and just having more dialogue, I think people will feel a sense of connection, like Pastor was saying. And so I think, but also in addition to just being more transparent about our life experiences, I think we have to allow the church building to be utilized outside of church for our community. And the more that we do that in interesting ways, the more people will be coming inside of our church and seeing it outside of just coming here for church on Sunday.
All right. Deacon Devin, I see it.
One thing I want to add to that, because they hit on a lot of what I was going to talk about. But there's one more thing that came top of mind to me, is that, the church has some work to do. And there's some obviously areas of improvement for the church. But I also think that the onus is on millennials too, and Generation Z to really be able to learn how to submit and be under authority. Because I feel sometimes that, we are a stiff neck generation, and sometimes where we want it now, we want it in a way that is convenient for us. And sometimes it puts a lot of added pressure to the leaders who are trying to manage multiple generations. And so while I completely agree with everything that is being said, we also have a responsibility as seekers and believers of Christ to be able to submit to authority, be able to be corrected. Because what good is a leader? What good is a shepherd if they cannot tell you when you're wrong, and they can't bring you back into the fold? I think that if we're not cautious enough, we will become a generation of pacified pew goers, where everybody is sitting in a pew with a pacifier in their mouth because we don't want to be told the honest truth. And so I completely agree, because I think that there is a lot of stuff that we as church people can do better. But let's not forget that as a generation, we have to be able to submit to authority and submit to leaders and submit to the word of God. Ultimately, just submit to the word of God, because that is the truth.
Can I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
I think Facebook or the pandemic has taught us church does not need to be 10 hours long on a Sunday. If you really want to know why millennials and Generation Z is not going, they need to cut down 8 to 10 hours to about 45 minutes to an hour. There's no reason church should be longer than 1 hour. That is all I had to say.
Right on in.
Can I say something before you move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, so in reference to what everyone, and I totally agree with everything that was said, I think one thing as millennials, and it's kind of piggybacking off of what Deacon Devin said, but I think as millennials, it's kind of hard to decipher, but at the same time, I think we do have to take ownership that we need to give honor where honor is due. A lot of times we may have ideas, and maybe because of the age gap that is between us and our superiors at church, it may not be understandable, so it may not be received. And sometimes our first emotion is, okay, well, y'all don't understand, let me move on, in another direction. When sometimes we need to just be still and let the Lord reveal to us, maybe it's not time for your idea right now. Maybe it's time for you to cultivate some stuff and maybe just have a conversation with your leader so they can have a better understanding. But then on the other hand, as well, when it comes to our leaders, we need our leaders to be open and not halt every idea that they don't understand. We need them to have open heart and understanding, because this is 2020, and like Dr. Marlon said, if this hasn't taught us anything, it has taught us that life is short, time is of the essence, and we have to adapt to change. Because if we look at churches now, everybody is virtual, and if someone is at church, it's only a certain amount of us. So I think on both ends, we have to be able to stand still and wait as it relates to our leaders or whatever they're identified at everybody's church. And then on the other side, we need leaders, like we said previously, who are transparent and open to change. Because sometimes, because of tradition can actually halt progression. So I think we need to do our part as well, being submissive, as Deacon Devin said, but also at the same time, as Dr. Marlon said, we need to be able to adapt to change. And I do want to say, on the hour of church, I agree with you, sir. But also, we don't want to, when the time comes back and we can go back to church, we don't want to put our leaders in a position where if you don't get this done in an hour, then it's over. We still want to be able to give God, the access. If we need an hour and a half or hour and 5 minutes, but yes, during this time when we are virtual, I think an hour is more than enough, in Jesus' name. That's all I'm saying.
Neil, can I say this real quick? Can I just say this? I was talking to an older relative, about hour service, and she in her mind couldn't understand how church could be 1 hour. That shows you we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
It does, but you know what? It was something we discussed previously in meetings and whatever, where we were trying to figure out what the necessities were within the service. And we did come up with the fact that we thought that young people wanted the worship and they wanted the word. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're necessarily trying to, for the older individuals that are watching, because I see the comments, but for the seasoned saints, I don't think we're trying to rush church to be just an hour and that's all that we want. But we want to make sure that we put the focus on, let's get the word. Yes. Let's cut out all the extra, but let's get the word. I want God, you know, and a lot of our young people, a lot of young people our age, they want God. They want God, period.
Yeah, I completely agree, Brittany. If there's a move of God, I feel like our generation doesn't care how long the time really goes. If there's a mighty move of God and the presence is just in there, then I mean, that's one thing. But if it's like 1,000 announcements before all these accolades in between,
talk about it,
just kind of like, you just want to get, I'm not trying to get in trouble on tonight, but just, you know, you just want the move of God. So I agree with that, just wanting just the move of God. And that, Sister Chanel, you brought us into a good way to segue to our next question. I do want to let everybody know that it is 8:07. Do you guys have a little more time for us, or everybody's good? All right. Well, we'll continue to proceed. The next question, how can you as a leader encourage your pastor or fellow members to become more progressive? Right now, we know they're being forced to because we're in a pandemic. Forced to. But some people are still unwilling. So, I mean, in this time, I guess I'm going to go to Brother Tone with this question. How can you encourage your pastor or fellow members to become more progressive during this time?
You definitely got to pray first. Definitely got to be led of the Lord. And also, you got to have your pastor's heart. It's so important to know what spirit to approach your leader with, what attitude to approach your leader with, and what time to approach your leader with a certain subject, certain topic. I'll just leave it there. You got to pray.
Yeah. Go ahead, Angelica.
Well, I have to say I am very fortunate. I'm thankful for Dr. Herndon. He's extremely progressive, so I don't have to be twisting his arm when it comes to ideas. But I do think something that Tone was also bringing up that I want to talk about is following the hierarchy of your church. Like, if you have someone over you, like, don't go to your pastor, you know what I mean? Like, approach the leader of your department or with your idea first. I think a lot of people kind of move past hierarchy, which is a problem. And so I think that most people are probably not receptive for your idea because you didn't go about it the right way. But also, I think another thing is try it on, have an experiment, walk everyone through the concept. I know for me personally, I'm like a go-getter. I'm always about moving the vision forward, but also I know that other people are not. So maybe bringing another person who kind of differs from you and your personality on your team will help kind of shape your concept to hopefully be successful, but definitely follow the hierarchy of your church before going to the top.
That's really good. Prayer and following the right order. That is definitely good.
We have a habit of going over and above people's head and going straight to the pastor. Sometimes we don't have to burden them with all of that extra. They have other things to think about. But that was really good. And I don't know if you all can see, but Sister Kathy Harris definitely told us as we move forward in time, y'all will have shorter services because you'll be in charge.
You like Kathy.
But we will be in charge. And I would say, or I ask this question, what would you say to a younger person? And I've been in this situation before, but what would you say to someone our age or a younger person who feels as though they're stretched too thin, being that they're the only young person in the church or they're the only millennial? And I can say from experience that you can, if you are steady and you just maintain as much as you can, try your best and put forth the effort to help your church progress and think of innovative ideas, then you'll be able to help them draw in more young people. And as you do, then you won't be the only young person, you know? But Deacon Devin.
Yes.
That question.
Absolutely. So I think that, and actually, I credit me learning this from Marlon, who is one of my bigger bros and mentors. But he taught me this a while ago when I became chair of the youth department at New Birth. He said, "Learn the art of saying no." And it is a art, especially in church, because everybody is used to you saying yes. Everybody is used to you, and it's out of respect, honestly. But you have to learn the art of saying no. And the reason why it's important is because, and just in the spirit of transparency, I found myself at one point doing a lot of church work and dying on the inside, where I was just numb at church. I was in meetings, I was leading choirs, I was doing a lot of stuff. I was on program, but whole time dying because I was not taking care of myself from a spiritual standpoint, because church wasn't church for me. Church was a performance, or I was backstage pulling the strings and not listening to the word, not soaking and absorbing the experience. And so learning the art of no for your own spiritual sake. And saints have to learn that, you can't be everything to everybody in the church. And believe me, I've grown up at my church. I am the pastor's grandson. And so when he needs me to be something, I will be there for him. But he has given me the freedom to say, no, I can't do that, or I can't be at that service all the time, or I need some downtime, if nothing else, for me and God. When's the last time I talked to God at church? If you find yourself not talking to God when you go to church, you got a problem. You need to sit down. You need to just kind of take a breather. And if you don't, you'll suffocate while at the church doing God's work.
Can I jump in on that?
Yep.
I think that it's important, as he was saying, to find a way to have your personal time with the Lord. You got to have your own personal devotion time. And this is not meant directly towards you, Deacon, but you can't put all of the stock on your church experience to have a relationship with the Lord, especially if you know that you are serving. You got to be on point. You, the person, has got to make sure the live is up. You got to turn the soundboard on. You got to play the drums. You got to lead praise and worship after you play the drums. I don't know how you do that, but you got to be in place. You got to be in place to do what you got to do. You got to be able to go back and watch the live on Monday. Spend time with the live that you produce on Sunday, on Monday. Get in prayer by yourself. And that's so important, to have that personal time if you are the main production person, to make sure that things stay streamlined.
Can I jump in on that too? He said the art of saying no. And I think a part of the art of saying no is acknowledging what you've already said yes to. And so for me, I had to say no to some services because I said yes to my family. For some of us, and I'm going to take it outside of that, I had to say no to some women because I said yes to my wife, right? And so a part of the art of saying no, is identifying and understanding what you said yes to. And when you have that in order, then it's much easier to say no to some things.
Can I say something too?
Go ahead.
Yep.
Were you done, Pastor? I'm sorry.
Of course.
Okay. What I wanted to say is, I love that the art of saying no, that really is coming from a pastor's kid. We've all had our share of doing church work, and a lot of us became overwhelmed in some areas. But I have learned that in saying no, you give somebody else the opportunity to say yes. That means everybody doesn't have to come to you for everything. You say, no, I can't do this, but hey, sister so-and-so over here is really good in this area, and she might even want to do it and actually have the time to do it. But when we become We just want to please the saints, please our leaders, and sometimes that's a spirit within itself, because if we find ourselves trying to please everybody, when are we pleasing God? You know what I mean? So that's something that we really have to take into consideration. Yes, you can say no, and you can say yes, but have balance in both. Don't just say no just to say no. If you can do it and be of help, do it. But while you're doing it, I think the wise thing would be to train somebody else to do the same thing that you're doing, so you won't be the only person that they go to every single time.
That was good. And just so you know, Auntie Kathy came back with another comment. She said, it's really good. I'm going to let you know what she said, okay? She said, you have to have a place in God where to fill up, an open space to work and to feel your soul, where you don't have to make decisions and just sitting in the presence of God.
That's good.
Auntie Kathy, she give us the good nuggets.
That's my godmother there.
Yeah, coming on this live so we can watch you give some word.
That's very good.
Everybody is dropping in some key nuggets on tonight. I'm even being encouraged. So I thank the panelists on today. Let's see, our next question. I guess we kind of talk about the art of saying no. How do you maintain a balance between church and everyday life? Clearly, I think we all agree on that the art of saying no is a big part of maintaining your balance. Do you all think that there's anything else that we could add to that, or between balancing your prayer life?
Dr. Mark.
I guess I'll just kind of open it up for the floor. Or if we think we answered it, we can move on.
Well, I mean, I think in life, one thing I've learned quite early is you always have to have a passion. You always have to have a hobby. And when you actually identify it, and I think sometimes we identify these things as like far off grand things, like, skiing or, something like that. It's like, no, like what is a more everyday tangible thing that you can do? I think once when you find that, and you just make sure that, I think something I had to learn is like, my job can't be my hobby, and church can't be my hobby as well. So what are you doing outside of that? And so that is actually refreshing you. I think that will help. But it doesn't have to be lofty. It could be really practical, and once when you find that, that has helped me a lot.
That's good. And Pastor Terrell said, if it starts with order in your life, balance is as a result of order. Balance comes as a result of what you prioritize.
That's good.
Yeah, come on, teach, Pastor Terrell. Pastor Terrell Edwards. But that art of saying no, I think Dr. Marlon and I spoke of that before when, I found myself drowning in church work. And you can say no and find time to make balance, but then come back in and start to work again.
Refreshed.
You're refreshed. You found that time to take time to yourself and get yourself together, but come back in and then get back to work. And it's all right. I'm doing my working right now. Praise the Lord.
10 weeks. Brittany's been faithful. Y'all watching StreamYard.
I told you, I said, hey, you need to say no.
Yeah. That was our conversation. Say, hey, say no. It's all right.
I think I want to add something to that. I think that, and this is something that my wife has taught me. Your vacation cannot be the convention and the convention.
Come on,
You got to get to a beach, get on some jet skis, lay in a bed in a different city. You just got to get away. And I think too many of us just go to the convention and say that's our convocation. And we love church. We love church, and we love being in service. We love being in the meetings. We love, building the ministry and doing what we do. But you got to take care of yourself and take a vacation from your job and church.
Yeah.
I am a huge believer of that. I don't like mixing business and relaxation like that. So yes, take your time.
Absolutely. because all of my summer vacations growing up with my grandma was going to the AIM conventions.
Now, you're not about to talk about Mother Patterson. Them they something.
And Brother Zoriante brought up a good point, which I 100% agree on. When you are on vacation, okay, this could go for the pastors too, and for the leaders. When you're on vacation, don't get on the Zoom call. Vacation, enjoy yourself, relax. It's okay. Take a mental break, because you can come. I'm telling you, you come back, you refreshed. It feels good. It feels good. But I see another question. Why is it so hard to be loyal?
But when you say
Loyal to
Like the Lord, the church, or
Are we loyal to? I believe that they mean the ministry. So let's go with that.
These are some faithful millennials we have on the panelists.
Yeah, we are faithful. They did in fact mean the church, and I know that some young people do struggle with being loyal to the church, but I don't want to say that it's an issue with loyalty, but rather there's something that they're searching for.
Mm-hmm. Right, maybe that relevance conversation from earlier, maybe that resonates or sometimes affects the loyalty, like what the panelists have talked about earlier on tonight. Just have they found what they're looking for at their current church? Do they feel like they're getting fed, or are they looking to eat somewhere else because they just need to be poured into just for that moment and then maybe come back and be refreshed? I don't know if that's a part of the question or what they're looking for specifically, but I don't know if anybody wants to pick up off of that.
Yeah, can I say, I would say this for me is that I remember when I graduated from college and then I came back home and I started visiting the services at New Life, and I was also going to church in New Birth, and I really started feeling drawn to like join New Life. But I felt bad because I'm like, this is my family church, this is where I grew up, this is where everyone is at. And I felt like I was more being led to go to New Life, and this is where I was being fed at. So literally for about 2 years, I paid tithes at New Birth, but was going to New Life. I know that's just also wrong, but in my mind, that was like the right thing to do. And it's like, hey, I still go quickly over here to a New Life service since we'd be out by 10:30, 11, and then go over to New Birth and then be there for about 3, 4 o'clock, to a point that I started getting tired. I'm like, you know what? I just really had to make that decision after talking to my grandmother, after talking to, the bishop, and then, then I was like, I really feel that the best decision for me is to completely move in this direction. And like you said, it's not about loyalty. It's not about being disloyal, but it's about going to where you feel that God is leading you to feed your spirit, to where you can grow, personally, professionally, spiritually, all of that. And I think the most dangerous thing is to stay in a place to where you're not growing. And you're only there out of loyalty to a person, family member, or the name. That is a dangerous place to be in.
That is true. And I know there are some young people who are faithful or working in their church, but they do a lot of back work. And this is part of the young person needing to take a vacation or pull back a little bit and to take some time, because some young people do try to remain faithful, but they go to other churches to get fed because they don't have the opportunity in their church. And what I mean is they're so busy working behind the scenes that when it's time for the word, they're pretty much exhausted. And so you might find them going to other ministries or see them going everywhere else to hear other ministries because they just didn't catch it at their church, or they may have missed it, if that makes sense. Pastor Tracy, I see you look like you got something to say.
Oh, no. I saw a comment that was made and a question that was proposed. But I would also say this. I'm going to go back and I'm going to say this. I think that more people will be loyal if we were willing to be more liable to what we do. So if more leaders were willing to be held liable for what was happening, then more people would be loyal. Like if there was more accountability in place, then there could be more access and more, commitment. But That's just my 2 cents.
Can I say something too regarding that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, okay. It is so hard sometimes when I hear the word loyal in relationship with the church, because I think loyalty people almost equate it with lifetime. And sometimes you're not meant to be at that particular church your entire life. Maybe you're meant to get developed there in your season, to get poured into or to pour into the church itself. But I think it's very, just like Dr. Marlon said, it's very difficult when you put that kind of, I want to say, identification, like you have to be loyal to this, you have to be loyal. Like, that's tough. And that's tough for a lot of people, because some people not even loyal to their job, right? So how you going to expect them to be loyal at church? You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think we have to understand that there are seasons. Like the Bible says, there's a season and a time for everything. And just because I leave maybe my home church or the church that I grew up in, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm not loyal. It just means that my season may be up there where I could be a help somewhere else. So I think we all need to pay attention to those things, because sometimes a lot of people are loyal and a lot of people are dying while they're in church just for the sake of saying, I'm here.
Can I add to that and flip it a little bit? I think that the nature of this conversation is great because we all are loyal, but I want to ask the question of how do we hold the church or the leaders accountable for not developing the next person? It's hard to stay loyal when I've been here and you won't give me an opportunity. And it goes back to the space earlier of like, okay, you want me to sit, you want me to wait, you want me to develop, you want me to cultivate my idea. But how long do I have to do that while Sister So-and-so, no offense, has been the chairperson for 60 years? We're not developing the next person.
Tone, that's a big question, sir. That's a big question.
That's loaded. You're going to get these season saints on us.
That's good, Antonio.
You know what? That's good.
Dr. Marlon.
No, I was just going to say that's always been an issue that I felt that I've had when it comes to a lot of Black churches. I'll say that way, Black traditional churches. And I'm not trying to just say that doesn't happen. Okay, he said it. Okay.
I'm up north, bro. Trust me.
Okay. They doing it too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, well, I would say just within the traditional church or body of church, we have to get to a place that we begin to train the next generation. Because what I've seen happen is when a pastor dies, and then now it's a mess because there was no transition plan in place. Right. So now you got a leader that's been put at the head, right, of this church or this body that was never meant to be placed at the head and lead the body. So then now it's all in disarray, right? Because everyone figures that they can be the leader, they can take control of the church, who was never at the end of the day meant to take control of the church. So I believe that it's very important that a leader begins to then put a transition team in place. One of the things I love about Pastor Hannah, he started a ministry called Joshua's Gathering, right? It's short for JG. It's for an age group 18 to 35, and it's to really start training up people. The next generation is what he called it, because it's kind of looking at Moses and Joshua. So looking at how do you train up the next generation to take over ministry, to take into leadership positions. And I believe that leadership has gotten comfortable, right? And sometimes they feel, well, they don't know what their next step is. And so because they don't know what their next step is, then they're afraid. And sometimes they may be afraid to say that, to say, hey, I'm afraid to train up the next generation to take over or to then help me transition into the next spot. And as Tone said, I've seen it. People die in these positions, and then when they die, the ministry and everything else die with them. And
I think it's even like more local than the pastoral leadership. Like, I think that we got to take this down to like who's over the deacons, who's over the ushers, who's over the music department, who's over this, because those people have been in the seat for so long as well. Like the pastor, I mean, we can't tell pastors they need to sit down. That's between them and the Lord. But one thing I also love about New Life is that Pastor Hannah has a torch passing service. So you have your X amount of years that you're leading that ministry, and you're not in a casket before we see the next person like take that torch and carry it on. Like, and then we see them pray for the next leader over that ministry. So those are things that we are blessed to have at New Life, and I'm really thankful for that. Because growing up, I didn't see that. You know, some of the leaders, and God bless them, some of the leaders that were leaders when I was a child are still leading.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
And
Go ahead, Devin.
I just wanted to jump in real quick because I mean, I work as a profession in consulting, and one of the things that we tell all of our leaders and executive and just think about business world is, what's your succession plan? Because you can build a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're thinking about, all right, we got the $1 billion, we've hit our goals, but I want to retire and enjoy that billion, and I want residual income from that. And so to make sure that I get residual income from that, I'm going to make sure that I have a succession plan in place so that when I hit that age where I'm just not as, smart or wise or witty, that I'm still going to get the residual income. And so I think we can adopt that as a church to understand that there is some residual income in putting succession plans and thinking about the next level of leaders, and that you want to be able to sit back and say, my church is still successful, even though I'm sitting in a pew. My church will still be successful, even if I'm not the one leading that. And so I told my pastor when he asked me to take on this position that I didn't plan to stay in it for my entire life. I have no intentions of doing that, that we should be thinking about the next level of leadership and the next responsibility and turning the torch over. And so I think the quicker we can learn that and adopt that from the business world, the better off we can be, and we'll have sustainable churches that are still growing the next generation of leaders.
Can I jump right on that thing right there? I don't think, and it's this all due respect, Deacon Devin, I don't think we have to adopt or practice anything from the business world if we actually get a better understanding of the spiritual world and a better relationship with God and that following the Spirit. Y'all talked about it with Pastor Hannah, and I think all of us going to join New Life after this call based off Tone and Dr. Marlon. But yeah, like if we actually do what the scriptures say do, then all of those systems will be in place, and we don't have to, practice anything. And I'm sensitive to that because it's unfortunate that the church is so often behind the curve in things when the Spirit is what sees ahead, and the Spirit will reveal things to us that nobody has ever even understood or grasped. And I wish we were just more in tune with the Holy Spirit and allow the Holy Spirit to lead us and guide us and correct us. And I think we would see those systems in place if we actually did that.
But it's also about being consistent, about even refreshing ourselves about what the scriptures is saying about leadership and leadership succession. I think oftentimes, like, even though we're not trying to use the business model as our, model, they are quite frequently still reiterating their motto, their mantra, their ideas. And I think a lot of times we should be doing that too as our church. Like, what is our mission statement? Who are the people who we're looking on? How are we training the next individuals? And I think it's good for us to talk about it, but we have to be consistent about talking about it as well.
That's true.
Good. That's good. I just had to tell you that. I like that. Give you some
like, y'all keep dropping these nuggets. Like,
yeah, y'all, all of y'all, everybody.
Everyone.
I think it's important that we remember. I remember Auntie Kathy when she was getting me together for the role or position that I'm in now. It was something that she used to say to me was that you should have to be there in order for it to run. It needs to go on without you. So it was a responsibility of mine to learn and to humble myself to make sure that I train someone to handle everything, handle the choir, handle the ministry, the portion of the ministry that I work on when I'm not there. And my pastor, he made sure that we did the same, that we were able to handle the church. You shouldn't have to be there to make sure that the church runs. So that there's a person coming in off the street, we're able to handle that. We shouldn't be just like, where the pastor at? No, you should be able to handle it. You know, but that was great. Yes. And it looks like everybody on Facebook Live is loving this conversation.
Great job, Charles. But yeah, I agree. We definitely, and I think it's even, the responsibility even falls on all of us. I mean, we're talking, Pastor Tracy mentioned the generation after us. Like, it's our job to make sure to see, using the spirit of discernment, to see who is really working in their gifts right now and who could be the next so-and-so to take my position or wherever I am. And I thank God for, I'm going to plug my church too, since all y'all are doing it. God in Christ in Everett, Illinois. Bishop Moody was the founder. Pastor Carlos Moody Jr. is my current pastor. But just saying that seeing how even when Bishop was here, how he trained the young people to still go forth. He was allowing us to run full services, you know, and the adults, when I tell you the faces the saints can make as a youth looking into the audience and seeing the seasoned saints, we love them, but they are not encouraging on Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock, okay? You know, where's the elder that's going to sing all the congregationals instead of Chris Tomlin or, you know, Todd Delaney or, you know, whoever. But I just thank God just for that opportunity. And that even goes back to the pastor or our leader being supportive. But yeah, I definitely feel like the responsibility falls on all of us that are even on the call to train up the next generation so that they can take our spots. It's one thing to train somebody else that's our age. That's cool too, but also using our spirit of discernment to see that, oh, so-and-so will be walking in this gift and they'll be ready to do this or they're able. But yeah.
And can I just piggyback on what Sister Gregory said, is that I think it's so important. We're talking about the generation before us, like them reaching back, but it's also important that we take the time and ask ourselves, who have we reached back to help coming up behind us? Because a lot of times as millennials, we get so busy within our own lives and we don't take the time to mentor Generation Z. We're not helping them. And so we talk about them, but we don't take the time to help them. So then when they get to our level, our age, we can't be like the generation before us and complaining and saying, oh, look at them, they stuck in their ways. No, what have we done to help them? And I think that's important that we make that change and that difference right now.
Yeah, and mentoring can be messy too. And I think that's the tough thing about it is like, we just want to like mentor the polished people or people who kind of look like us, but you have to start from wherever they are. And I think that's something I'm even working on myself. Like, if you want those folks in the church, you have to take them where they're at and be available, you know, have them, take them out to lunch, treat them, have your phone available to talk to them. But yeah, I think that's true. The quicker we understand that we have our hands up, whoever the Lord places in our life to mentor, they may not be polished and buff, but with God and with the church and with our guidance, they can get there.
Absolutely.
Can I add this last piece of stuff to this mix, this messy mix you just talked about, this cake we baking? I think what jumps out to me is also this, and this may seem ridiculous or radical, but I'll throw it out there and y'all can judge me if you want to. But I'll say this. I think part of the problem what we experiencing is a lack of representation. And we've been talking about a lot of top-down sort of stuff, like passing it on. But what happens when we all at the table? So what happens if I bring my 5-year-old to the table and share something with them and let them just express whatever it is that come out of their mouth, or the 15-year-old or the 25-year-old or the 35, 65, whatever? What happens when we're all at the table and praying about whatever it is, planning whatever it is? I wonder what that will look like in our churches. And again, my point is, again, diversity. I wonder what it looked like if we actually had diversity at the table and not just top down telling you what we want you to do or training you how to do it like me.
That's good.
All right.
That is really good.
Good.
Angelica snapping her fingers. Yes.
That was good. Yeah, I think it's also important for us is if we do take on the, younger generation, allow them to sit at the table, those of us that sit at the table with them need to make sure that we try our best to maintain or try our hardest to be an example. Not to put you on a pedestal that you'll never be able to live up to, but try to make sure that your walk, and it goes back to us being transparent, that your walk lines up with what you're teaching and telling them, or what you have your mentee around you, and you're telling them, you need to be saved, but you know, you're doing your thing, you know. So I think it is important for us to do that too, and make sure that we have, as Pastor Sherry used to tell me all the time, make sure it's a standard that you're living up to.
Or as my grandmother would say, it's little foxes in the vineyard that was singing.
I see Brother Chris Hodges is saying, bring everyone to the table. And it's a lot of people saying diversity at the table is a great idea. But listen, we have had a great discussion this evening. Had a wonderful time. I see people talking about a part 2. Listen, okay.
You know what? I just thought about, I know we got to go. And I like, Pastor, I like your idea. I think if there was I don't know if it allowed more than 10 people, but have diversity with this conversation. You have a mixture of the millennials, Generation Z. I don't know what you call the generation before us. What are they called?
The baby boomers.
Baby boomers.
Them baby boomers.
Baby boomers, and then before them, you know, whoever. Like you have a mixture of people having conversations with each other. And then that, I think, can definitely be powerful to have that. Like, why not begin to kind of make that mix and make it happen?
That's great, Mark. That's a great idea. Thank you for putting it in our Minister of Music's head. He is now watching us. But this was a great discussion, and we were really glad that you all came on. I'm really glad to have you all. And so now we're going to turn it over to Elder Owens and Missionary Tammy. And, you know, we thank them for allowing us this space. Thank them for allowing us to be on. They're really dope. This platform that they're using is really, really, really great. So we're going to bring them on with us. And then panelists, thank you so much. We appreciate you being on.
Thank you.
All right. We're turning it over to you guys now.
Listen, when I say absolutely fantastic. When I say second to none, there was a little interruption there in their conversation. But listen, if you didn't catch it, you didn't know it was gone. It was there because they made it back. It was fantastic. Let me say, God bless the host, Brittany Bogan, the co-host, Missionary Gregory. Woo! Fantastic. And see, this is what ministry is all about. Giving opportunity to those who are ready for the opportunity and those who can handle the opportunity. When preparation meets opportunity. And when I tell you they have met it, they have hit it out the park, I want to be like Chairman Michael Richardson, Michael Eady. He will say, phenomenal job. Phenomenal. Or Bishop Booker would say, now you all right with me now. You all right. Listen, we want to say to the millennials, they planned the panelists, they did all the work, and we want to say to them, you did a fantastic job. Now, I heard about that plan, session 2. That session 2 is all right. We had 2 for the pastors. We can do 2 for the millennials. So listen, it's all right. This is your platform. This was created for you. So listen, whenever you have something to say, structure it well. Let it be seasoned with grace and the anointing fall. Let's do it. So whatever they come up with, we'll be in support when we present.
Yes. Definitely be in support. I mean, I think they did a wonderful job, and I'm just so happy and excited. I mean, this chat was lit, as they will say. So many comments, so many people chiming in. Sorry for the background noise, but so many people chiming in. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for letting them come on and have this session.
Listen, it was fantastic, you all. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It was the conversation, the comments were lit, everything was going on. So listen, on the height of that, make sure on tomorrow you go to www.f. What is this? Give me this. I'm on live now. Come on, give it to me right.
www.fjimdtshirts.com.
www.fjitshirts.com. Look, put it up, that prolific hour hoodie. Come on here. We're asking you for a $30 seed. With your $30 seed, you will receive a t-shirt and a face mask. With a $10 donation, you will receive a face mask only. Listen, do that, and let's make this happen. Listen, we love you the best. Thank you, Bishop, for the opportunity. Young people, you were phenomenal, and get ready for round 2. Listen, see us next week. We'll be here again live on next week, ready to do again what God has called us to do. God bless you, and we will see you next week.
Let's celebrate our King. He's the ruler of everything. Let's lift his name on high.